Hey everyone, so welcome to part 3 of our Donkey Kong Arcade remake utilizing 3D assets. In this video, we're going to take a look at enabling your character to grab one of the axes. The axe animation will then play for a fixed amount of time. If any barrel is struck by the axe while the animation is playing, the barrel will be destroyed. And then after a fixed amount of time, the axe will disappear and the normal animations will play. So I already mentioned in the previous video part of what makes this possible, and that is your character is actually already holding the weapon in his hand. So you've got this here, the Minotaur weapon, okay? So what we're doing, we're disabling the mesh renderer. So it's there, you just can't see it. Also, if you see that you notice this green box, there's also a box collider there that's necessary for collisions. And I think one other thing, the tag. I haven't used any tags in this game yet, in this project yet, but I did create a tag for the axe, so that way we can distinguish between a collision with the Minotaur and a collision with the axe. So I created the tag axe, so it's just add tag axe, and then you apply it to specifically the axe. So those are the things I want to mention about the character, is that the axe is already there, it's just the mesh render is disabled. There's a box collider, it's a trigger, and that I added an axe tag. And lastly, we're going to go through the script in a minute, but his script that's attached to him, the parent object, we're adding a new reference, a new variable, and what you do is it's for the mesh renderer. So what you would do is you'll take this, the axe weapon, and you just drag and drop it onto here. That way we can now make a direct change to that axe using the script that is controlling our main character, specifically the mesh renderer, but we'll get into that in just a second. Okay, so I think that's all that needs to be said about him from a non-coding point of view, just from a settings point of view. And let's take care of some of the easy ones. So the axe that's just sitting around that gets destroyed. This is actually really easy. This just has a box collider attached to it, its trigger, and B has this new script. So this functionality involves 3 scripts. 2 of them are pre-existing, 1 of them is new. This is the new script, and it's almost nothing. I tend to have at least 1 script like this in my projects where it's just a variety of things that need to destroy after a certain amount of time, or maybe there's a velocity that's applied when it first instantiates. So it's kind of this catch-all script. Not really the same as a game flow script, because a game flow tends to be associated not with any one object, whereas this is just the opposite. This is associated with lots of objects, and it's just these kind of miscellaneous things, because I really try to avoid script clutter. I try to avoid having hundreds and hundreds of script, that if possible, if reasonable, have less scripts. If nothing else, because if you have like 100 scripts, you're jumping from one to another to try to figure out how something is working. So if possible, try to have script consolidation. Anyway, so let's take a look at that cleanup script. All it does is on trigger enter, so we've looked at that before in other projects, and in fact earlier in this project, and it's simply looking for the name of the object that's being collided with. So if other.name contains Minotaur, as you can see, the name does contain Minotaur. I just didn't feel like renaming it. You could call this Hero, you could call it Jumpman, you can call it whatever you want. So whatever you call it, you would put it here. So other.name.contains the name of the object, and then destroy game object. One of the reasons why I use contains is that, say you spawn this, well, it would be this name plus the word clone in parentheses. So by saying contains, you don't need an exact match, you just need that part of it. So again, on trigger enter, if the collision is happening with another object that is named Minotaur or contains the word Minotaur, then destroy the object the script is attached to. Again, the script is attached to the axe. So that's the only new script. Okay, so how about the barrel? I'm going to do that one just because that one's also easy. So with the barrel, we simply have within a section that we already created before, the barrel already has an on trigger enter, and that's where we're checking to collide with the oil at the bottom. Well, now we're just adding a new check. If other.tag equals axe, so that again is the tag that I added to the axe in his hand, then destroy game object. So pretty straightforward. If the object the script is attached to, again, which is the barrel, if it collides with an object that has the tag axe, then destroy it. And again, when I went into this character, I showed you that the axe object has the tag axe. Just trying to keep it straight because I call this object's name is axe and the other one's tag is axe. So you want to keep it clear which one you're checking for. Probably not a good naming convention. I probably should have done something different so as I don't get them confused. All right, so that's 2 out of the 3 scripts. So the remaining script is our main character. So what we've done, we've added 2 new variables. This one I already mentioned, public mesh renderer weapon mesh. I already showed you what that's for. By making it public, and it makes it accessible in the inspector, and then you can drag and drop an object onto that. In this case, we dragged and dropped the axe object that's in his hand, which means that we can now modify the mesh renderer of that object using that variable. Private string hammer time equals no. So clearly this is going to be used to determine if he is in the mode of hammer. And the reason why you need to detect that for a few things is in the original game, I believe you cannot jump while you're hammering, and you cannot move up and down. You cannot move up and down ladders while you're hammering. So you're going to add some checks eventually that look to see, okay, if you're in hammer time, then ignore the space button being pressed for jump. If you're in hammer time, ignore pressing up and down to go up stairs. We'll either do that at the end of this video or the next one, depending how long it takes me to get through the explanation. So those are the 2 new controls being added. This has not changed. We're still looking to determine which direction your character is facing in. Same for this one. Now this is where things start to change. So previously, I said if these conditions are being met, then you reduce velocity to 0 and then play idle. In other words, he's not moving, so he should just be idle. Now we're adding a condition to that. So there's that hammer time variable. If hammer time equals no, against double equal. So if hammer time is equal to no, then go ahead and play idle. Else, and could be anything, but probably the only thing it'll ever be is Y for yes. Get component animator play attack 01, and just as a refresher, attack 01, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So that's what we've done is rather than playing this by default, we now check. And we check to see if hammer time is set to no. And if it is, then go ahead and do what you normally do, else play this new attack. This is still as it was, but once again, we do another check. If hammer time is equal to no, play walk, else play attack 01. And this is something I mentioned in the previous video, is the fact that you really want 2 separate animations. One is when you're standing still and attacking, because Mario could indeed stand still and whack the hammer, or he could run around with the hammer. Well, this character only has 1 attack, and well, he technically has 3, but they're all standing. None of them are running and attacking. So you will see the character sliding around. Whatever model you use, keep that in mind that you're going to want 2 separate animations. One for standing still and attacking, one for running and attacking. Haven't changed this, which we should eventually, because we're gonna, like I said, you should disable this for hammer time, but just getting through the basics right now. So this is the same. This is when you're landing on the beam after you jumped, so that has not changed. Okay, so this is new. So on trigger enter, if other dot name is axe. So we already looked to see when the axe was colliding with the player. Now we're looking at the player colliding with the axe. And here we go. Weapon mesh dot enabled equals true. Hammer time is equal to yes, and now start this coroutine, which is also a new addition to this. So we're enabling the weapon mesh, that way it becomes visible. We're changing the value of hammer time because that's being used as a control, and then we're going to this new coroutine. So the coroutine is this rampage. So yield return new wait for 6 seconds. So in other words, the hammer animation is going to play for 6 seconds. Then weapon mesh dot enabled equals false, and hammer time is equal to no. And when hammer time is equal to no, then that means this automatically will play, or this will automatically play. I say automatically, we put the control into place to detect when hammer time has been enabled. So in total, maybe 10 lines of code. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, maybe 15, 16 lines of code, but some of those are very small. They're just else. So not a whole lot. And like I said, this isn't quite perfect because we would want to lock out space. So what this would say would be something like input.getKeyDown space. So in other words, that's true. And hammer time equals no. So you're making sure that you're not in hammer time. And I think that's it. So I put an X right here just so we don't have to run around. And let's do this. Oh, by the way, I did add a particle system to the barrel. Technically, that should trigger after a barrel hits it, and then a little fire guy jumps out. We'll see if I go that far in the game. Okay, so we walk forward, and there we go. So hopefully the explanation was good and clean. It's hard to explain because it's a lot of conditions. So what I was saying about that hammer animation is that it says to do attack 01, but what happens is after it plays, it stops, and then he's not idle, he's just frozen. So by having it cascade into another attack animation and then back, you've created this perpetual loop. And then this is broken again by the code that says, okay, if you're no longer in hammer time, then then play walk, and that breaks it. Okay, so I think that all that remains is we just need to put a barrel in the scene. Maybe I'll do the instantiation of this as well before this lesson is over. So we'll just roll this, put it at 90. And I don't want to grab it too soon since it's only 6 seconds. Grabs it. There we go. So it works. And like I said, he was sliding instead of walking because we don't have a separate walking and attacking animation. So again, be mindful of that. I believe there are a way of editing and combining animations, but that's way beyond me. And particularly for a project like it's probably overkill. So let's go ahead and add the spawner. So I'm just going to pause this for a second and we'll add the spawner. And then I think we'll save the climbing of ladders for a separate video. And in the separate video, we'll also have the completion condition of climbing up there. Okay, and I'm back. So I did the typical create an empty GM object, and you attach a game flow script to it. I believe I'd already created that. I just hadn't called it out. So you create your empty object, you put your game flow script on it, and this does a couple things. Public transform barrel object. So this is how we're going to refer to the barrel so we can spawn it. In the start section, we say start coroutine, and then the name of the new coroutine that we're about to write, barrel spawn. IEnumerator, barrel spawn, yield return new, wait for 4 seconds. Now, in your game, this is probably going to be a variable. Why? Because after you beat the 4th level and then it cycles all over again, if I recall correctly, the barrels spawn faster. So the first time it might be 6 seconds between barrels, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3. So you'd make a variable, and then with each successful completion, you would reduce that variable by 1 second. Instantiate, as I've said before, there's 3 arguments: what, where, and rotation. So what is being instantiated? That barrel object. Where is it being instantiated? We're actually going to spell out the exact location. New vector 3, -12, 27, 0. Depending on where you've made yours, those numbers might be very different. That's just where it is on mine to spawn it where I want it to be. Barrel object dot rotation, so the barrel's rotation. And I did change its rotation before I did that. So whereas you saw me dragging this and rotating it, I permanently changed the rotation to 90. So that's a pretty straightforward type of spawner. So we'll just run this now. There you go. So that's it. So that's the core functionality of level 1 of Donkey Kong, with only one exception. And then, like I said, we have to add the climbing of ladders. That will be pretty clean, but one of the reasons why I want to save that for a separate one is because I want to be able to we have to put in some more conditions, so we'll do that all at the same time. So like I said, um, with space, you shouldn't be able to jump when you're on the ladder. You shouldn't be able to jump while you're holding the hammer. You shouldn't be able to climb the ladder when you're holding the hammer. So there's gonna be a lot of more controls put into place. So I don't want to do too much at once and make this a mess. I want to make sure that, again, it's an iterative process. So I hope this wasn't too much. I think that this was, I always hesitate to just say the term straightforward, but again, it's just reiterating on ideas that have already been that we already visited. It's just building on them a little bit more. The fact that we're checking more conditions now and determining which condition plays which animation. Okay, so I hope you found this useful. If there's a feature you'd like to see, please leave it in the comments. Please consider liking the video if you've made it to this point. Please consider subscribing, because the overwhelming majority of people who watch videos do not. It's something like 5% of the views come from subscribers. And I do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.